Never before have entrepreneurs had such close access to the gatekeepers of the news. And here on Off the Press podcast, they will give you the jewels to help you put your own name in the headlines. Learning the secrets to sending perfect pitches, turning news into story ideas for the media, and becoming a true asset and resource to the media and to your industry. Join us as we talk to influential and insightful journalists and media professionals and get insider advice and tips to help you land your next or first media feature on national TV or even the front page of your hometown newspaper. Our guest today is Jessica Harrington. She is a podcast host. She received her master in health at Westchester University. She's the owner of Journey to Yourself and is a speaker and stress management coach. Through her career in education, she realized that we all have a common issue. Everyone at some point or another struggles with handling stress. Through her own life journey, Jessica created the Journey to Yourself podcast, and we are going to be talking to her today all about being a podcast host. Welcome, Jessica.
Hello, thanks so much for having me. I love your introduction. Everybody needs what you're providing. I love it. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we did like a little overview, but give us some insight into basically how you got into health, stress management, and then how you ended up becoming a podcast host from that.
Yeah, of course. So I started my career in education in the drug and alcohol field. So I was, teaching about education. I was teaching about, common life skills. And one of the things I realized that a lot of my patients needed was stress management when, they relapsed or when they were coming back to the rehab. And, questions were, I didn't know how to communicate with my significant other, or I lost a job, or just these normal day in stressors. And I'm going, well, everybody needs that. That's not just you guys. Those are quote unquote common things that we all need. And so it kind of like struck the light bulb. And I kind of went to my supervisor and presented this opportunity of a group that I wanted to present to my patients. And the one was like, yay, this is awesome. And the second supervisor said, well, they're just going to come back. Why, spend so much energy in this? I'm going, well, why are you here? Well, if you're not here to help and, support our patients. And so I was talking to my first supervisor and he had mentioned the word burnout. And young and 20, you're taught it in school, but to really experience it is a whole different avenue, right? And so that's kind of where this whole prevention part came to my mind. So I went and got my master's in public health, and I really started educating others about what stress management is, burnout, and it really led into where I am now. So I worked with adults with diagnosed with schizophrenia, children with special needs, low-income families, and then I ended up just saying, I'm gonna start my own business.
Yes, so great. I went into entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur. 99% of the people listening to this podcast are going to be entrepreneurs. So, it's great to hear other entrepreneur stories, especially that we can relate to. So tell me, what went through your mind when you were like, all right, I'm doing a podcast?
Yeah. So, as an entrepreneur, they talk about visibility, get your message out there. I mean, amongst so many things that they tell you, right? And I personally love speaking. I don't know if you can tell, but I love speaking. And so I was like, well, let me just give it a shot. I listened to them all day long. How hard can it be? And so my biggest fear, and we can get into this a little bit later if you want, was the technology part, because girl, never give me a computer. I have a really nice computer. I probably use 10% of what it actually can do. I turn it on and I turn it off, so I was more nervous on that. So I actually found an accountability partner and I said, I'm going to start a podcast in January. And, we set the time, the date, and that date was coming a lot closer and closer. And finally I said, okay, let me just record an episode and see what happens from there.
Right. And so before we started recording, we were just having a little moment because this is the first time I've ever been a host. And, we were talking a little technology, and you told me that your first podcast, it was just your phone, right?
It sure was. It sure was, because when I started, again, as an entrepreneur, it's just like building our business, you kind of just start with what you have and you really just grow from there, And so I had the app. I use Anchor. I was like, okay, well, it says you can record on your phone. My brother actually called me and he goes, Jess, I really need you to get a microphone because I've listened to 2 of your episodes and you're loud and nobody likes that in their ear. So he actually purchased me my first microphone, and now it has the cover, it has all the fun things. But yeah, it definitely started with just the phone.
Nice, nice. And so when you first started out, let me know that, it was just kind of you and the phone doing a podcast. But now tell us about your podcast now, because you have guests as well.
Again, going back to, just getting it started. So I was like, well, I can just talk about stress all day long. That's no problem. But for me, I love that interaction, and the podcast that I listened to, I really liked the going back and forth storytelling and things like that. So that kind of intrigued me. So why not do it on my own? So my second season of my podcast, I was interviewing people about hobbies. I really feel like they connect with, stress. You're learning something new, you're building confidence. I mean, we can go on forever about how amazing hobbies are for you. So I really just started interviewing different people, specifically my friends, to be real honest, about, different hobbies, they have, and, things like that. I mean, there's so many crazy hobbies out there. And honestly, the cool part about it was people then started emailing me to be on my podcast, just based off of, like I said, just the friends that I grew up with. I'm like, hey, I just need to get this going. Can you be part of this with me? And so, yeah. And then people started emailing me. So on my third season, and where it's at now is that I actually interview other entrepreneurs about how they're taking away other stress. So like you're getting us visible. You're, showing us how to get on the press. That's a lot of stress. So advertisement, marketing, things like that. So that's your niche. So we all are doing something to kind of help others relieve stress and be happier and do something to support each other. And so coming out of that avenue, I think kind of enlightens other people's businesses.
Yes, awesome. That is very interesting. And, of course, as entrepreneurs, we know all about the stress. We specialize in stress. So thank you so much for what you do. So you talk about, like, most of your guests are entrepreneurs, that people started emailing you initially about it. So now, can you share with us how you find guests for Journey to Yourself podcast?
Yeah, of course. So love networking. I'm in a lot of local networking groups or go to networking meetings. So I do a lot of that. So when I meet somebody that I just really vibe with, I'm like, oh, we can have a conversation and talk. I say, let's jump and have a coffee. I see what they do and things like that. And I just mentioned to them, hey, I have a podcast. Is this something that would be beneficial to you to jump on? Most people are excited to be on a podcast. I mean, it's so much fun to meet different people, get your message out there. And again, just kind of say like, oh, friends, you just pick up your phone, you can hear me. Like, how cool is that? So I just put it on the table, and most people do take it.
Awesome. So yeah, so you just kind of find people that you're interested in, or if you come across someone, that may be a good fit for your podcast, you just kind of ask them. Do people still pitch you a lot for your podcast to be a guest?
It's fun to kind of be in that spot of growth where people are coming to you. So even within my networking, people say, oh, I know, Susie, she'd be so great on your podcast. You guys would totally vibe. You should have her on there. Or just, good old social media. People are still reaching out that way as well, going, oh, I just listened to episode such and such. I really would like to be a guest, or I want to introduce you to somebody. So it does happen. It does take a minute, but it does happen. And it's a really cool feeling.
Awesome. So when you are checking out a guest, can you tell us, like, what you're looking for? You're like, hey, this person seems interesting. Where do you snoop? Do you go to their website? Do you go to their social media? What are you looking for? Are you looking for pictures or professionalism? Like, tell us what you are looking for. What's going through your mind when you're checking someone out?
Oh, I love that question. Okay. So for me, I do the snooping because it's my name on it. Now, listen, have I ever really denied anybody? There's been some moments, but it was for different reasons. But it's never been, heck no, there's no way. It's just for different reasons. But what I really look for is the way they're presenting themselves, especially like you said on that website and stuff. So one of the things I look for is education. Are you educating me? Are you out there to provide that service where you are about the customer and making experiences for them and trying to show them the best way? Marketing, yoga, stress, whatever the case may be, whatever is your niche. And what I mean by that is, as soon as I hit your page, is it all sales? Or is it going, this is my story, this is who I am. this is my passion. And then you always have those bits of education pieces in it, and I always love seeing how people are showing up for their clients. I think it's really cool because there's so many different ways to support your clients. And social media, I do like a little scrolling. I'm not checking followers. I'm not doing too much of that extent. It's more of, just the engagement. And I'm not looking for politics or anything like that either. It's more, again, just, are you a nice person? Are you being nice to other people? Are you, things like that, respectful, things like that is what I would be looking for.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Do you ever run across people who have like a press page or a media page or a press kit or media kit? And if so, do you find those helpful? Do you recommend that people have them? Like, what do you think about those?
Oh, I love them. I think they're so cool. I think it's something to really brag about, that, you've been featured on somewhere, or you were on this talk show somewhere, or even just had a blog somewhere. I have a couple articles out. I'm working my way up to the bigger ones, but it's just really cool to kind of say, that's my work, and it's not a showing off. It's just that proud moment. You really see people saying, and you get to really, you can hear people on their podcast, you can see the normal marketing tips, but when you see somebody kind of either being interviewed or having that blog or article out, it's really cool to see their intake or their input on that perspective of whatever they're talking about, right? It's kind of their message, the way they're educating. It's so cool to hear how others educate about different things. So I think it's awesome. And I don't know if this is something that you do as well. It gives all the information for, the podcast interviewee. And so that's always a really cool benefit as well. I love getting those because everything's right there. The interview bio sheet. Sorry, that slipped my brain. But, has all their information right there. And kind of what you just said, where are they all featured? It's always on that bio sheet. It has all the books that they have. It has all the speaking events, where they've been interviewed, and the articles they have. I've been on Forbes. It's a really cool thing to see other people have those accomplishments.
Nice, nice. Yes, we definitely like those. So what places have you been featured? You mentioned that you've had some media coverage before.
So nothing crazy. I'm working on. I've sent my letters out. I've definitely put my 2 cents here and there as of now that are published. One's from medium.com and the other one is Carolina Magazine.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Awesome. Great.
Pretty close to you.
Pretty close. Yes. Pretty close to Tennessee. I actually am originally from South Carolina. So that is super duper close. I'll probably know the publication.
It's their Vogue. It's their version of Vogue. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. Awesome. So let's talk about sharing. So say I'm a guest on your podcast and, my episode comes out. What do you expect from me as a guest to help promote it? Do you check to see if I'm sharing it? Like, what can people do to help share?
So I always highly recommend sharing. I think, it's a support, right? So I'm helping you, you're helping me. Being a guest speaker on someone else's podcast is getting you visibility, right? So, but I think in just a respectful way, sharing whatever, post or email, whatever they had advertised you in. I think it's always just kind of just shows that thank you, appreciation. I had fun with you. I'm going to share that podcast as well because your name as well. So it's that kind of that win-win. So I always highly recommend that. So I think it's just really great. And then we all know that our favorite word, algorithm. So obviously we want to do that as well. So I just really think it's a win-win for everybody. Me personally, mine are on all the platforms. So it should be easy for others to share. I'm literally from Instagram, from YouTube, all the way to Pinterest. So it's LinkedIn, Facebook, it's emails, it's a website, and so if we're doing that as a podcast host, that little share, is definitely helpful.
Awesome. So if someone were to pitch you, what type of stories, what type of angle would you take for your podcast? Actually, I'm going to reframe that question. I'm actually going to reframe that question and ask this. What type of stories or guests are you looking for the Journey to Yourself podcast?
Oh, I love that. Okay. So for me specifically, like I said, I'm looking for entrepreneurs, business owners. And so what I'm really trying to do, there's 2 things with my podcast. I want others to see that they can, one, if you're an entrepreneur, you have a place that you can go and see different resources, right? So that's one. When people are telling their story about where they got from A to B, I think that's always a key for me because what I am able to share is that hope. But right, it doesn't have to be a very serious moment to get from where you are. And I think sometimes when people are looking for that passion story, they're looking for those really hard times. But it could be, and I'm going to air quote simple because it's not simple, a mom who just says, I want something more. Right. So there's still courage in that. There's still strength in that. It doesn't always have to be something more. It is always your story. And so I always love highlighting your story because it doesn't matter. Pain is pain, support is support, strength is strength. And that I love highlighting that because I think that just gives a lot of us that hope and guidance that they can live the dream they want.
Awesome. Do most of your guests tend to have like an offer? And if so, what type of offers do guests typically have? And what like resonates with your audience offer wise?
Oh, so there's a good chunk of freebies, right? I would say freebies are really easy ones. If you have that one that, helps collect you with your emails, that's always really simple. And I always think simple is the best because where people are listening to podcasts, they're not always able to go, oh, well, let me download this and put this on. A lot of times, I don't know about you, but my phone is usually in a different room when I'm listening to the podcast. It's not always on my hip every time I'm listening to the podcast, so for me to run back and make sure I have that, it might be a little bit harder. So just maybe a quick little download or, for you to take my email and I get that freebie is always really simple. But a lot of my guests also, they give that percentage off. Here's a discount if you use your code. Here's the code, you can get this class offer. And then I would say also just the best way to contact somebody is always a great thing to have there too. So if you are, but just one, not giving the 8 different ways to contact you. Like I said, I'm on all the social media platforms, but I'm not going to list out every name for everything because that's a lot. So if you are an Instagram person and that's your jam, the best way to contact me is Instagram, but I'm available in other ways as well. At my website, you can find my other ways to contact. Again, I think being the simplest is the best way, but offers are always obviously really great as well.
Nice. Who is someone that you really connected with after an interview? So a guest that you had on there and you were like, oh my gosh, friends forever that you've kept in contact with. You don't have to say who, but is there a kind of situation? And just kind of tell us about that because I feel like a lot of people don't understand is that like members of the media, journalists, podcast hosts are people too, and friendly and, you could build a genuine relationships with the media. So have you ever connected with someone like a guest from your podcast and you're like, oh, besties forever?
For sure. It's so funny. I had a couple of people spot in my mind. So like I said, this season, I've really connected with entrepreneurs because they're the ones who are really gravitating towards me and asking questions and wanted to be on. And so switched up the method. But there's been a couple, I can think of one particular who I made a post in one of these, Facebook networking things, and she reached out and was very interested. And we literally were just talking today. We're just our biggest supporters on this is the thing too, with like you said, we're all human. We are pretty much a conflict and we're still supporting one of each other. Does that make sense? And I think sometimes in our industry, we're going, oh, well, they're another media person. We can't be friends. We're another stress management coach. We can't be friends. And I mean, you could disagree, but to me, I just feel like there are so many people out there. There's no way one person can be everybody's stress management coach. There's no one person that can be everyone's media coach. I have a different method. This is my method. I still support her because she's amazing at what she does and she's great, but she has a different method and there's nothing wrong with that. And I just think that's, to me, is really important. Like you said, we're humans and you make so many great connections, and she's put me into so many different connections that she wasn't able to. She goes, they don't want my method. Here's your method, and they want your method. So it's just been so cool to be able to support each other in so many different ways because entrepreneurship can be really lonely sometimes. So
yes. Oh gosh. Thanks so much for hitting on that. That is definitely the truth. I think just in media and communications, it could be so kind of competitive and people gatekeep a lot. It's definitely the case in publicity and being a publicist. It is kind of lonely, but listen, there are going to be publicists on my podcast because like, how can you not talk to people who you can relate with the most? And so many publicists are also, turning into journalists and vice versa, the lines are really getting drawn. I'm a publicist, but now I have this podcast, so it makes me a part of the media. And, pretty much anyone can be a part of the media these days. So your podcast is in its third season, right? Tell us what that went like from like the beginning, and then kind of like what's coming up for you.
Yeah. So it's crazy to think, I mean, business alone, let alone the little milestones within your business, you have to highlight. So yeah, the podcast has definitely grown and it's been cool to see. So like I said, when I first started, it was just a phone, my brother was probably like the only listener, but it's okay. He would share it, things like that. So to see that growth and to see, like you said, people coming to me and wanting to be on my podcast, and I know you get that feeling when they're like, oh, I just loved working with you. I'm going to share this and encourage other people to reach out to you, having that feeling that people just want to talk to you, not even just for selling, but just saying, hey, it's cool to just talked about what I do and in a different light, and just, I think that's like a huge growth for me. But I think the biggest growth for me is, one, I have a deck that I still have to edit. So that's always nice when there's like a pile to edit. It's a good and bad problem to have, right? And then consistency, when I first started my podcast, it was very much, okay, when I have time, and it was, maybe twice a month, things like that. And then all of a sudden, once you find your niche and your vibe with it, you're like, oh, I want to do it. I'm excited for the next episode to come out. I'm excited to interview somebody and meet somebody, connect with somebody, and hear what people think. It's been cool to hear other people's feedback. When we first start out, again, in any aspect of our business, it's, well, just as long as you're going to say something good feedback, I don't want to hear it. I just need positive vibes right now. But now being able to kind of go hear all of it, not that I had this pile of negative reviews, but being able to hear like, oh, Jess, your microphone was a little weird that day, or, whatever the case may be, I'm able to take that in a different light than maybe I would have been last year,
Nice. And what do you see ahead for your podcast?
Oh, so because I have a pile of episodes, I see my podcast probably coming out twice a week at this coming in the fall. So that's kind of exciting. And I see actually hiring somebody to, take on that role of editing and things like that. So that's pretty exciting that it's growing to that point as well.
Awesome. That is super amazing. So sounds like you're growing and scaling a lot. Let me ask you this. Do you use Haro? And for those who don't know what Haro is, or Haro, there's so many different ways to say it. Apparently there's no correct way. Helpareporter.com. And it's where journalists can put in queries to look for media sources to have on a podcast as a guest, or on a TV show, or to quote in an article, or to put in a gift roundup. Have you ever used Haro? Do you use it? Like, give us the deets, because it's my favorite.
So I have heard of it. I have not used it personally yet. It's on the podcast to-do list for sure. Again, as you know, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of wants. So that is definitely on the want for sure, because I only heard amazing things about it. So I do think that, but as of today, it is not being used now.
Okay. And then do you ever post on social media looking for guests using the hashtag find a guest? Or do you ever use hashtag be a guest? Those are really popular in like the podcast industry.
And this sounds like, again, it's just a woe me problem to have. I have like 40 episodes on deck right now, and I'm closer to the fall. So, which is great, right? It's awesome. It's so exciting. So right now I'm not doing that, but being a guest, yes, I have used that. There's so many great Facebook groups out there, as we all know, but let alone just for podcasts, the support of the community. Again, it's just, everybody wants to support each other. It's such a good feeling, especially in the entrepreneur field, where others are trying to share each other's, things and stuff like that. Or, other entrepreneurs are on another podcast and, I get introduced that way. It's just a really good support system out here for sure.
Nice. And where do you hang out on social media? And do you accept pitches on social media?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. Like I said, especially when I've been trying to do my interview searches? So that's a really, really good question. So I will say probably Instagram and LinkedIn are my social medias that I'm always on. LinkedIn probably the most, but Instagram for sure on a daily basis. As for pitches, at this moment, I would accept them for sure. Yeah, I always want to at least listen to someone because, I remember those days, especially in the beginning when it was anybody out there, somebody listen. So I definitely, want to help them if they're in that shoes for sure.
Nice. And then do you prefer people send you like a little quick, like 1-2 sentence pitch saying, hey, I like to talk to you about this. Let me know if you want to talk. Or do you like for them to like go into detail a little bit more and kind of give you the idea that they have in their mind?
Oh, such a good question. Okay. So especially with social media, I would like just, hey, saw your podcast, heard you interview, whatever the case may be. I would like to be, a guest speaker as well. Could we talk more? For me, that would probably be the best, especially on social media, just because the long messages on social media is just like, oh gosh, crap, I opened that. I didn't mean to open that. And I have to, to respond now, things like that. So I would say, right to the point is always the best for me.
Nice. What's the best way for people to pitch you if they want to be a guest on your podcast?
Yeah, of course. So my Instagram is Journey to Yourself 101. And then my LinkedIn, it's Jessica Harrington. I think it's MPH, but it'll probably come up Journey to Yourself as well. But I also have it actually on my website. So journeytoyourself.net. There's actually a guest form. So, whatever is easiest for you, I have that as well.
And do you have any tips for anyone filling out that form who's interested in being a guest?
It's a pretty straight up form. I don't ask too many crazy questions. Honesty is always the best for me. Just my biggest question on there is like your mission. Like you said, how are you supporting your clients, being there for the people that you're trying to work for? So I would say that one.
Awesome. And so when you're not working, doing journalistic things, doing entrepreneurial things, there's no such thing. We're always doing that, right?
It's always on. It's
right.
always on.
Had to throw that in there. What do you like to do outside of like work, entrepreneurial, editing, all that stuff, if you have time?
When I have to press the reset button, I will say I have to be outside. We all have that space in your office and you open the door and like, oh yeah, there's a world out here, so I would say outside with the dogs is probably my definitely go-to for sure. Just being outside.
Okay. And then we're just about to wrap up and I'm going to ask you one of my favorite questions before I ask you the last question. This is my favorite question. If you could be featured somewhere in the media, where would you choose and what would your headline be? What would the headline be?
Ooh, okay. I feel like I'm like nervous. Is she going to
on the spot?
On the spot. You know what? So I would say my first instinct would be the local news, just because it's my hometown and I'm all about my community any way I can support it. If there was a bigger name, man.
Your hometown.
Yeah, we could do hometown. Yeah. All right, let's do hometown.
What would the headline be? Yes, because listen, I'm all about the hometown hero. I get so many people who want to be on the cover of Forbes. I'm like, are you on the cover of your local magazine? Like, let's start somewhere. I love a hometown hero. Yes. So what would your headline be in your hometown newspaper, magazine?
My go-to, because it's my heart, is self-love over stress. That's my go-to. I love that one.
Nice. I love that also. Okay, last question. What do you hope our listeners take away from this conversation that we've had today?
But I will say, just get started. I know we all hear it. We've all listened to every entrepreneur podcast and they're like, well, did you get started? Just get started. So I will say two things: get started and keep going. There's no such thing as overnight success, but there is that night when you wake up and the clients are at your door. It takes a minute, I promise you, but that consistency and just keep going on the days that you're going, you know what? Let me just go on Indeed and look at 9-to-5s again. I promise you, skip that night, just walk away. They're coming.
Is there anything else that you would like to add, where you would like to go, us to follow you on social media or go to your website, download anything, join your email list? What can we do to keep in contact with you?
Oh, I love that. So Journey to Yourself 101 is my Instagram name. On the website, there is, and if I can provide it to you as well, there is my freebie, and it's the time management freebie. As an entrepreneur, this is huge. What I do is I help you break down your day to day, because like we kept mentioning, that to-do list is never ending. Once you cross one thing off, you add 3 more. So how do you find that balance? Like you said, there has to be that time of turning things off, walking away from the computer. So that's what I really try to help you do. And that's how I break that down and do that for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Jessica. You guys check out the Journey to Yourself podcast. And if you are a good fit, go to her website and fill out that guest form. And I hope to see you on the podcast. So thank you so much for being our guest today. We really, really appreciate you and all that you're doing for entrepreneurs and stress management, and also being a part of the media and helping us share our messages. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.